chapter 3 in the text, which I put the book up there, starts talking about mobile stuff, and it's kind of interesting. And I have a couple of videos I want to show you today. This kind of looks kind of weird. Okay. All right. How many of you got cell phones now? Everybody? Everyone who doesn't have one. Okay. Who does not have a home phone? Okay. Who does have a home phone then? Just two of you? And the others won't answer. You just won't answer. Okay. All right. And businesses 20th century come around. We all had old telephones, which we no longer do. Okay. It says in the U.S. they had 125 million and 20 million apartments had phones back then. Everybody had a phone. Y'all remember that? Parents still had phones. Grandma had phones. Everybody had phones. But then in the 1990s they started coming out with cellular. Okay. For the longest time, people wanted it, but people didn't think, I'm not going to get one. They're kind of cool. They're too expensive, whatever. So who has more than 2 phones on your account? Just come here? Okay. Yeah. Y'all have like the shared plan or something like that where you're shared data?
Everything.
What now?
I have unlimited everything on the lines.
My son still does because he had it way back when it was available. But we're going to look at that here in a minute too.
Upgrading to their new pay-as-you-go, get every unlimited with their pay.
Yeah. Like at least with AT&T, they keep changing the way things work. They kind of force you into the new stuff. I don't know if you've noticed that. You really.
They try to anyway.
Yeah, they try to, but we're going to look at that here in a minute too. But we started off with first generation phones, which were very slow. They were mainly analog. Y'all know that Canada, I think it's this summer, is totally removing all analog service.
They just not doing that?
Yeah. Well, it's like I have OnStar in my car. And OnStar has always been analog. And I even called OnStar. I'm like, why are you guys still analog? Seriously? And they're like, yes, but analog's reliable, which is true. Because digital, you need a decent signal. Okay. But people are starting to get rid of it now. We're getting enough coverage where there's enough digital coverage out there. Okay. So first generation phones came out. 20 years later, everybody starts to have them, and now we can't live without them. So what's the one thing you always remember to grab when you leave?
Your phone.
Wallet.
Keys important. But, phone is one thing you always grab. Okay, it's just funny. Okay, so this is 90%, in the U.S., 90% of adults now have a cell phone. 98% of 18 to 29-year-olds, which are most of you guys. Okay, and you're Cole, aren't you?
Yeah,
You were in my classes since 2013.
about 10 years.
How come I don't remember your name?
I had you for a lot of online classes.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I just saw that today. I'm like, wow. Okay. But, so we have, stop. Okay, there we go. Stop it. Okay. So what we're saying is everybody has a phone. And, when I was a kid, I don't know if that was when some of you were kids, but when you got in trouble, what did your parents tell you to do sometimes? Go to your room and stay there. Don't come out until you tell you to. Does anyone remember those days?
Yeah.
What is it now? Get out of your room. You're not allowed to get back into your room until I tell you to. Because like my stepkids, they will literally stay in the room the entire weekend. Because they're on their phone, they're on their iPad, they're on their laptop, and they won't come out of the rooms. And it sucks.
But there's also all these handy dandy apps that you can put on their phones and their laptops and things that you could lock them out of their devices and they have to call.
Oh, I do. I do the, I don't know if, did I tell you all last time I did to my niece when I took her phone where I locked it and had her pad so I could tell when she got into the phone. So, all right, they initially start off as two-way radios. And remember Nextel? The Sprint bought them out.
Those were pretty sweet.
Yeah, we actually had a phone that was like a walkie-talkie.
They
And
still have those.
they still have them? That's what I was wondering.
Even on their digital network, their 4G network, they've switched it over.
They still work on them,
Yeah, they still work
Right.
on it because what they did is when they bought out those antennas,
Right?
they had their antennas, and now that they've moved to 4G,
Right.
is what they're doing is they're taking those old analog antennas
Right.
and they're updating them to 4G. So now it
They still work.
doubles all their antennas,
Nice.
and it still uses that.
But if you don't know what it was, basically it was your phone that worked as a walkie-talkie. It's kind of like sending a text message, but voice. And it was very handy because you'd be out on jobs like, hey, Bob, are you there? Well, and it would go beep beep on their end and they'd get the message. So kind of a handy thing. not that popular much anymore. Actually, I don't know anybody who has it anymore.
Construction,
Yeah, it really.
mainly construction workers and oil field workers.
Yeah, because you want to get rid of the other radios. But really, other than that, I'm gonna say I don't know anyone around there has. So we had those. We had analog. So there's a lot of radio frequency out there. Okay, and the way cellular work is really our phone, believe it or not, is actually a very low powered radio. Why is it a low power radio? Anyone know why? We don't want a high power radio next to your head all day long.
Too
Like,
much radiation.
like cooking your brain. So what happens is the towers have to reach us. We really don't reach out very far anymore. That's why, like in this building, our signal sucks because the signals can't get in. Coverage maps, and I was a little disappointed the book didn't have one in here, but I'm going to see if I can't find one real quick. All right, I'm going to go to, let's do T-Mobile coverage map. Who's got T-Mobile? 2 people? Okay. I was going to switch. The reason is I do all this mystery shopping crap, and my wife had to do one for T-Mobile, and they sound great, but when you look at their coverage, okay, so here's Chapter. Okay, so the pink is good, the rest sucks. So let's look down here. See, I live basically right here under this 40 sign. But look at all this white just going down to Lake Thunderbird. That's not that far away. Do y'all agree with that? Okay. But all this white means there's no signal. So I said, we can live with it. But we wanted to go visit her sister in Tennessee. So now we're going to zoom way out here. There's a lot of white. Henrietta. But look at these areas. I mean, right here, I-40. There's like very crappy service. I mean, so I was like, wow. And where we were going, so there's Little Rock. So we were basically going to be coming down through here. But I could just, in my brain, I'm envisioning my cellular searching, that kind of stuff the whole time. Because it was terrible. And she lives somewhere down here somewhere. But, it's just crazy. Now let's look at AT&T map.
But what they does, is like, you're supposed to be able to make at least 911 calls.
Everywhere.
Right. I've had a plan where I went into literally a dead zone. When my car broke down, I literally couldn't even call for help. Because I was in a dead zone.
And, the funny thing is I did an Alaskan cruise. I'm out in the middle of a sea day. All of a sudden, my AT&T phone rings. I got in the middle of the ocean. They actually had towers put out in the middle of the ocean. Yes.
By the way, most of your maps won't show this.
Right.
But there's actually 2 maps. The term 4G,
right.
3G, LTE, and with Sprint called Sprint Spark.
Right.
That's all data coverage. It's
right. Not voice. Voice is usually bigger.
Voice is totally different.
Voice is usually
totally
bigger.
Different map.
Right.
But Sprint does show those 2 different maps.
But that actually brings up another question. How many people make calls on their phone? A few. But, I mean, what do you use it mainly for?
Texting.
Text, email, Facebook. All right. Now look at the AT&T map. If we get down here, we're going to look at AT&T's data coverage. Why am I in Europe all of a sudden?
Because they secretly know you want to go to Europe.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
Not
That was
Canada.
what they do. I must have clicked on something wrong because I kind of like.
You're on the international.
So where the heck? I was on there a second ago. All right, so there's our voice.
Oh, that's what you did. You hit data in international instead of.
That's why. Okay, so let's go data in the United States. Still, even driving to Tennessee is still a lot better.
With the little slashy lines.
Yeah, well, you're talking in the middle of nothing out there. Have you ever driven out there? There's nothing.
But that's where Roswell is.
That's why there's nothing. They don't want you to call anybody. Area 51's right out here, this big white area. You can't call anybody from Area 51.
You know what, though? Down there in Southern California, there's a place over there that the Navy has.
Yeah.
It's called China Lake.
Nice.
I
But
went there.
so I was way up here in Alaska, out in the middle of the Gulf of Alaska, and my phone rang. And it wasn't even long distance. It was regular AT&T service. I'm like, what the hell? They said, yeah, there's an actual tower out here in the middle of somewhere. I'm like,
They get their service up to Alaska.
that's probably what it is. Okay, so coverage maps vary. So you really need to look at your carrier where you want to go, okay? Because they
Look at
do.
the Go phone service.
What
It's
now?
like the Go phone service. It's
Yeah.
like your your prepaid
Right.
service.
So cellular maps, look at those. He did have a very valid point because it really matters. Are you talking voice or data or both? Okay. All right. You have transceivers, and they start. Basically, what happens is you connect to a tower, and the nearest tower is right over by Tinker, isn't it? From here, I think it is. Okay, it's actually a Verizon tower, isn't it? I forget which tower it is. But you basically talk to a tower. Then the towers are connected. Now they talk about them being connected via a T1 or trunk line. They're actually bigger than that, most of them now. But you actually talk to the tower, then the tower transmits them back and forth. Did you ever see, let me find a picture here. Okay, let's go to cell phone tower. We're going to look for an image of one. Okay. Okay, you see tons of these all over the place, but these are the ones I wanted to look at here. Okay, so this is our cell phone tower. You see you got these microwave dishes?
Right.
They actually point to each other, so the signal goes over the curvature of the Earth that way. Okay, so what happens is our cell phones are connecting to all these up here. But this tower is transmitting and receiving from other towers via this microwave link. That's why the towers are every so many miles. From wherever you're at, you should be able to see the next tower if you're up on this tower. And I was actually in Vegas a few years ago, and back then they used to have a Wi-Fi competition. Who could get the longest, the farthest Wi-Fi signal? They stopped doing it. Does anyone know why? Because it was getting to the point where it was so far that the curvature of the Earth was interfering with it. It's like you could go many, many miles, yeah.
But there is one huge misconception most people take on these towers,
What?
and they don't realize it. I didn't know it until I got the training from Sprint about it. These towers are actually directional. And a lot of times when you see a tower, it could be only pointing.
Right. It really
signal
goes by the
this
ones at the
way,
top.
And to the other sides and to the back, it's not doing nothing.
And it also, if you're too close to them,
Yeah, you
they
won't
don't
get
work.
signal at all.
right, because I live right at I-40 in Choctaw Road. And let's bring up, I'll show you what I'm talking about. I know everybody's going to, someday I'm going to have like 800 people in my house.
Just have a big house party.
I've actually done that many a times, actually. All right. So if you zoom out here,
There's there's his address.
I want you to see something over here. This is my house right here. Right here, it's hard to see, but pretty much right where my mouse is. This is I-40 and I-240 where they meet. Right over in this bit of bottom down here, there's a cell phone tower. And I would always call AT&T. Says, yeah, I mean, I can see the tower. But they're like, yeah, but are you too close? Now, for that one, I'm fine. I'm plenty far enough away. But there are some times if you're too close to a tower, I mean, it's sending the signals out. So kind of like straight down, there's nothing. So you lose a lot. So, all right. But I actually had at-link Wi-Fi for a while where they had an antenna on my roof here, which pointed to this tower. Somewhere. It's right there, I think. Is that the tower?
That's somebody's house.
It's not the tower. Somewhere right down here there's a darn tower. I see it every stinking day. We'd have to, I know, here's what we're going to do. Where's Street View nowadays? I don't like this new Google Maps. Seriously? Come on.
I just love how GPS seems to be 3 houses down.
Yeah, I love how GPS can get you all the way across the country, but it'd be darned if it gets you on the right side of the street. Okay, fine. There's Street View right there. Am I going the wrong way here?
It's gone. Oh, the wrong side of the street.
Holy crap, I think there's something.
Where the hell am I at? Oh, there's Love's. Okay, we'll see it right over here. It's behind the trees. That's right. Oh, there it is, right there. Is that it? No, that it. No, we're gonna find it. Hold on. We're gonna find this. We gotta get behind this hill.
There it is.
Yeah, there's a closer one, isn't there? Am I dreaming? Is that it?
That's it.
Yeah, I guess that is it. Okay. Yeah. It just looked closer usually. I don't know. It's because I'm going backwards on the highway. That's why. It's causing an issue.
It's kind of weird how they can get you that picture just like that at the bottom of that. There ain't no camera.
Yeah, that's it. That's the tower. Yeah, it's right there. So, but you know, again, if you're too close, it could cause issues. But my house was in the perfect location for it. Okay, so they started talking about Ma Bell and Bell Labs. Eileen used to actually work for Southwestern Bell and then AT&T. Y'all remember when they were all Southwestern Bell, and then there was AT&T, then they joined, then they separated again, and then it was Singular. It's like, what the hell? They mentioned it in here, but part of the issue is, what now?
My grandmother retired from Southwestern Bell.
The problem was people, you know, since really AT&T and Southwestern Bell was the largest company, they were worried that there was no competition. But there was. They actually did still consider to develop things, and they have. You know, as I said, it's a remarkable 70-year run of technology breakthroughs and stuff like that. So they're actually, heck, the old Unix system was developed by them.
But didn't Southwestern Bell and everybody else all combine together to make AT&T, and then they got forced to separate?
Right. So then they got separated again. Now they're back together again. Right, because Southwestern Bell and all that became AT&T, but then they broke out Southwestern Bell again, and then Singular, and now they're all back together again. It's like, make up your stinking mind. It's crazy. Okay, they start talking about frequencies. Okay, you do realize your phone works on a frequency, and we can't have more than one frequency on top of each other. So what they really do, the way our towers work, is they actually have multiple frequencies. So towers used, it's kind of like your Wi-Fi in your house. You can have, you know, I think channel 11 is the most popular, but you can change the channel that your Wi-Fi works on. Tell me to get out of here. We got time. Okay. But we got to hurry up since we spent so much time on the other one. But the point is, what they do is they actually, different towers have different frequencies. So you'll notice, like frequency 2 is not touching a tower that has frequency 2. That way it's not going to cause an issue. See that? So you can actually roam from location to location switching frequencies. And it's not an issue. It's just like radio stations. You know, I listen to K-Love all the time. But if you drive south, you know, when you by certain mountains, that same radio station, the same frequency turns into a different station. Because people are broadcasting on the same frequency. So you don't want that to happen here. Okay? All right. So, let's continue. So they do allow us to share. Initially, there was only about 830 total usable channels on the cellular system, which is very small, but now there's a whole bunch more than that. Okay? They talk about frequency division, multiple access, and here's a picture over here. What they're talking about is they would divide the frequencies up, and you would get one, somebody else would get another, and it's very similar to your house Wi-Fi. Like even our Wi-Fi in this building, each of the devices on a different channel. Because you wouldn't want everybody on channel 11. They would conflict. So you know, that's the way they did. And they came out with time division, whereas you got it for a second, you got it for a second. They keep doing it by time. And there's a picture of that one. It actually came out originally with something called ATM, asynchronous transfer mode. But you get a certain period of time, but you got a big frequency range, but for a small portion of time. But you don't need it the whole time. Okay, it's like our computers. Do you think this computer can do more than one thing at a time?
Yeah. They'll have Adobe.
Yeah. It really can't. It can only do one thing at a time. It keeps switching back and forth. Okay, so yeah, I might have the screen up, but in the background my internet's going on. But it switches so quickly the user can't even see it's happening. The same with your cellular service. Okay. Then they came out with CDMA, which I was actually thrilled with. This is what Sprint started using, if I remember right.
Yes.
It was great. They tell you the amount. It says CDMA is a 3G technology provided the capability of the 1G system, but at a factor of 18. So it's 18 times faster.
They still use it.
It's still good.
They still
I loved
have
it.
and use it.
When they first came out with it, I was like, wow. But I still remember when they first came out with that, that's when text message, you still had to do it through your web browser. Remember those days? That wasn't over the SMS signaling network. But it worked great. Over a 2G system was 6 times faster, and they're still being used today. It has been upgraded since then. All right, so then they start going into, they talk about cellular handing off. What that means is, so I'm driving down the highway. Obviously, between here in Tennessee, I'm going to go through hundreds and hundreds of towers. What happens is I get near the end of my tower's range, then I'm also picking up the other tower, and then it just hands me right off to them. So there's really no lost in range because it's all forwarded to the same trunk line anyway. Okay. Then they start talking about the different versions of. Now I have a video here I want to watch. There's actually a couple good ones on here I put up here. I'm not going to have time to show you all these. I think was this the good one? Let's see. Yeah, this is a 5-minute video. We got time. I want you to watch this one. It explains everything from 1G all the way up to 4G. Okay. You can explain it much quicker than I can. Why is there no sound?
Hi, I'm Craig Mathias with the Wireless and Mobile Advisory firm Farpoint Group, and today we're going to be talking about cellular generations. With the announcement of the iPhone, there's a lot of confusion about what's 3G, what's 4G. A lot of these terms are imprecise, but I want to give you at least a little perspective on where they came from and where we're going with this technology and these set of technologies over the next few years. 1G, as you might guess, was the original analog cellular. And by analog, we mean the carrier was analog. We weren't sending bits over the air. We were, in fact, just sending waveforms, and primarily for voice. It turns out we could also do a limited amount of data. It didn't work very well, but it did work. And this whole technology actually sounded very good as well. One of the problems, though, is there were an awful lot of these in the world. We use something called amps in this country. In Europe, they had more than 8 different cellular systems, including NMT and TAX and a bunch of others. It was a mess. But there was a bigger problem, and that's what led to the development of digital cellular. Now, in digital, we're talking about sending ones and zeros over the air. And believe it or not, we did not do this in order to make voice sound better. We did it to get more bits on the air. Digital is more spectrally efficient, so we get more customers on the air, more conversations simultaneously. No real emphasis on data here either. In fact, this was rarely deployed. It was difficult to find, at least in this country, anybody doing data on 2G systems. And there were also a number of these that were completely incompatible with one another. TDMA, which was used by AT&T, GSM, which was used by T-Mobile, and then CDMA, which was used by Verizon and Sprint. And these technologies still exist to some degree, but gradually the carriers have been migrating to 3G. Now, there was an interim step on the way, something we call 2.5G, and that was simply putting packet data onto a 2G wireless network. So instead of circuit data, we used packet data, and the key technology here was called GPRS, the General Packet Radio System. Now, this could actually go, in theory, up to 171.2 kbits per second, but most users saw, say, 20 to 40 kbits per second. And again, this is still available in some markets as well. 3G, however, was a big step forward. Here we're talking about digital, but not narrowband anymore, broadband, and exclusively packet data. In fact, we have gotten throughput up to very, very high levels, 3.1 megabits per second on CDMA networks. This is the evolution of this CDMA. And in reality, a lot of users are reporting 500 to 700 kbits per second. Now, of course, your mileage will vary. Throughput is always highly variable. But we have been seeing significant advances here, including a new revision of EVDO that is being rolled out now by Sprint and Verizon. Now, instead of iOS 95, this is called CDMA 2000. And again, the carriers here are Verizon and Sprint. And then the other competitors in this country, the major competitors, AT&T and T-Mobile, are using the evolution of GSM technology, which is called UMTS, Universal Mobile Telecommunication System. So those are the key carriers today. Now, the development of the iPhone 3G, the announcement of the iPhone 3G, brings up a very interesting question. The first iPhone used a technology called EDGE, which stands for Enhanced Data Rates for Global Evolution, and it is in fact just an evolution of GPRS. Now, EDGE counts as a 3G technology according to the definition from the International Telecommunications Union, and they have been the arbiter of the definition of 3G for a very long time now. The general numbers that you look for in 3G were 144K bits per second when you're moving at a fairly rapid rate, 384K bits per second when you're moving not quite so fast, and 2 megabits per second when you're stationary or indoors. Now, the iPhone couldn't actually yield those kinds of numbers under every circumstance, but it was based on a 3G technology called Edge. The problem is, even when the first iPhone was announced, Edge was a relatively old technology. The replacement for it is something called HSPA, High-Speed Packet Access. Now, you may know this as HSDPA for high-speed downlink packet access, or HSUPA for high-speed uplink packet access, but it's all under that same technological umbrella. And we call this 3.5G because just as we were at an advance over 2G to 2.5 here that was quite notable, we had an advance over 3. And the advance over 3 is the fact that we can now go much faster than 2 megabits per second. How much faster? A lot faster. Believe it or not, HSPA is spec'd at up to 14.4 megabits per second. It's uncommon to find that kind of service anywhere in the world. 3.6 megabits per second and 7.2 are in fact becoming a relatively common phenomenon now. And the new iPhone 3G has this technology built in. You will not, in general, see those kinds of numbers. As is always the case, there's a big difference between peak and actual based on loading, your distance from the cell, the phases of the moon. Radio propagation is a fairly difficult technology to explain. But you can expect that you'll be getting 1 to 3 megabits per second, something on that order, out of these technologies going forward. But that's not the end. 4G is an entirely different animal, whereas 3G and earlier are all based on relatively conventional time division multiplex telecommunications technologies. 4G is digital, broadband, packet-based, and very importantly, all IP. In other words, we will be sending voice over IP over these networks as well. What's more, we will see very high throughput. Now, there's no formal accepted definition of 4G yet. A lot of people use greater than 100 megabits per second for raw throughput as the answer, but in general, you will not see those kinds of levels of throughput either. In fact, we're thinking right now that you can expect to see on the order of 3 to 5 megabits per second, which is actually quite astounding. We're talking about cable modem and DSL kinds of speeds into a moving device. You're driving along and you'll be able to receive and send data, hopefully not while you are driving, at those kinds of speeds. Wi-Fi, by my definition anyway, actually fits in here as well. If we deploy Wi-Fi on a metro scale and we use 802.11n, we really could see end user speeds of greater than 100 megabits per second.
Okay.
I'll watch it later.
Okay. I'm gonna put up another one. Another one I want you to see. It's about 4G LTE. This is about
more about phones right now. You hear it all the time at the cell phone store, even on TV and commercials. They talk about things like 4G and LTE, but what does that mean for you, your phone, and more importantly, your bill?
KTLA's Dave Malkoff got into a super secret Verizon building to answer the question, what are we paying for each month?
Those little 4G bars on your phone only work because there's an industrial strength air conditioner whirring at this secret Verizon facility in Southern California. This building is 4G LTE.
You're looking at 10 times the speed of 4G LTE versus your old 3G phone. So
isn't that crazy?
It's unbelievable what you can do.
To get downloads up to 12 megabits per second, believe me, that's fast. On a phone, cell phone providers have had to build these massive facilities across the country. They are much different from the old phone call switching centers. These do voice, web, and text.
So when you're sending a text message, that's different than when you're going to the internet. So your phone is talking to different parts of this building depending on what you're doing.
Well, let's talk about this. What is a cell in your cell phone? Well, it turns out that's just a technical term for an area on a map covered by one cell phone tower. If you're out in the desert, for instance, where not so many people live, that area is going to be huge, possibly 10 miles wide. But if you go into concentrated areas like Anaheim or Los Angeles in the downtown area, or maybe Hollywood, you're going to find very small cells. These could be just blocks wide because more people live in those areas and more people are using cell phones in those areas.
Right, so when you're using an application like that to watch a movie and you push a button on your phone, that's transmitted over our network to a cell site.
That's radio.
That's radio, yeah. Exactly. And then that comes into our switch here, and then it sends it back out to the internet, and then you're able to watch your movie.
But But all that speed ain't cheap. Most cell phone companies limit how much you can use their system. Let's say your limit is 2 gigabytes per month.
More than 90% of our customers use 2 gigabytes or less data per month.
Watching just one high-def movie on Netflix per month automatically puts you over the limit. But even for casual users looking at 5 websites a day, listening to 15 minutes of Pandora, uploading 10 photos to Facebook per day, also puts you over the limit. That means you'll pay a penalty.
They can get, for example, text message alerts and know what you're using, how much you're using, and you can manage it too.
You're paying for reliability. Even when disaster strikes.
We have 3 generators that would kick in. If those go down, then we have backups to those. These batteries are essentially industrial-sized car batteries.
Oh my God.
And it's enough to power this switch for at least, at minimum, 8 hours.
So even after the zombies attack,
Get down! Down!
you can still stream The Walking Dead.
You weren't able to do that a year and a half ago.
Dave Malkoff, KTLA 5 News.
All right, that gives you an idea of what the different technologies are.
So in case of the zombie apocalypse, at least for 8 hours, we'll have...
Right. After 8 hours, it's done. All right. We really don't have much time left here, but this book does cover each of them. But I figured it'd be better having the guy explain it.
So we skip chapter 2.
Right. That's more of the wireless aspect of it. I was trying to go more of the mobile aspect of this, so we're going to cover more on this one. But does anyone remember having Edge? All right. Yeah. And even we still have it now. Like if you drive to Houston, there's parts between Dallas and Houston where you get Edge. And it's like, whenever I see these, it's like, well, no sense doing anything because it ain't gonna do much. But they came out with 3G, which was obviously much faster. And I remember when they came out with the new, with the 3S iPhone. With the HPSA he was talking about, that's how Apple was saying it's not 4G, it's HPSA, which is fast.
Sprint now has the Sprint Spark.
So there's
The new padded version.
all kinds of different ones. And now, obviously, today we have 4G LTE. There's also WiMAX in certain areas. And I also read yesterday where up in, I think it's Kansas City, that has Google Fiber. The AT&T is offering one as well, cheaper and faster than Google. In the same area. It's like, why would you go somewhere else?
Because they're competing.
Yes, obviously. All right. We really need to spend a little time talking about this section here, but we don't have time today because we only have like 5 minutes left. Let's pick up right at this section. Because I wanted to. All right, and then our parabin thing should be solved by next week, where you all be able to use it. So we'll go from there. So, all right. You guys are free to go, and we'll pick up on. No, I'm not assigning you anything to do this week, so you get a week off.
Yeah.